Be sure and tell them Large Marge sent ya.
In the 90s, we were just teeny tykes. We went to movies and our bikes. We wanted to be DJs, but we were just teeny gals. So we went off to college and we remained best pals. 20 years later, we're still watching flicks and we're bringing you the favorite bit by bit. Sweetie and Sweetie are here to say it's the Large Marge Sent Us podcast. Hey.
Guys, welcome to the Large Marge Sent Us podcast, your favorite podcast where two sweetie sisters talk about their favorite flicks from childhood. I'm Sweetie with a Y.
And I'm Sweetie with an IE.
And it is June, the month of weddings, and also summertime, and 1 month before Sweetie with an IE gives birth to Sweetie with two E's. No. What is it?
That would be cute too. Remember we decided on Sweetie Junior?
But with an IE.
Yeah. So it's like
Okay,
me,
yeah.
but like a junior. And
Okay,
like I
yeah,
understand that's not common for women, but we're doing it anyway because this is what we do.
Do whatever we want.
Yeah, we're dubbing June Baby Month, guys. So technically I'm on baby watch as of next week. You know, 37 weeks, you're full term with a baby, so that'll be next Friday for me.
Hope you know how to spot indigestion versus actual labor. Because wow,
okay. All I could think
she
of
seemed
was
to have
like
problems.
Annie Banks, please read
Get
some
it
books about
together.
childbirth.
She's busy being an architect. Leave her alone.
What a nut. I mean, I can't wait to debunk or like kind of tear
there's
this
so
movie
many
apart in terms of like the labor stuff. And I know like why Hollywood does that and whatever, but I'm still just like, this is why people don't know still to this day about like what goes on in this process. And it doesn't have to be a clueless thing, guys. It's like a pretty, tale as old as time here. Birth. But so we picked a lot of baby centric movies for this month. We'll see how many we get to cover, as I'm gonna take a bit of a hiatus as the baby pops out of my vagina. Gonna need some time, so we'll try to get as many movies with babies out as possible before the actual baby comes out. No promises, guys, but could be doing a few movies, could be doing more movies, could be doing only 2.
We should record an episode from the delivery room.
Yeah, totally. I mean, no one's like freaking Annie Banks who's like, oh my God, I'm 5 centimeters and I've only had like 3 contractions. I mean,
well, they were coming like pretty
happen.
close. So I was like, is she ready to go or what?
That's
like,
not
what's
what
going on
happens.
here?
It's number one thing.
All right, I'll wait. I'll save it for we haven't even said what the movie is.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't think. The
No, we
movie. And so the first one we picked is probably, other than Baby Boom, which we've already covered, obviously, or Look Who's Talking, 1 and 2. Our favorite baby movie, probably. It is
Father of the Bride
Part
2. So with Roman numeral 2, not the number 2.
More or less means the same thing,
Yes.
though, right?
Definitely.
But yeah, so sequel to Father of the Bride, which is also one of our favorite movies, and which we did when Sweetie got married or engaged.
Yes. No,
engaged or married. Married.
You
were getting married.
No, engaged.
I think it was before it was after you were engaged.
No, I think it was because I was talking about planning a wedding. This was before COVID, so it was right because I got engaged like in December, and then we did an episode. And I was talking all about, because I had started to plan the wedding, and I was kind of like tearing the movie apart for all the wedding stuff. So kind of interesting that with this next phase, which comes, first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes Sweetie Junior and the baby carriage.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of using
then comes Jimmy with the baby carriage. The guy's always like pushing the baby carriage.
First comes love, then comes marriage.
Then comes Jimmy with the baby carriage.
No, then comes
That's how we
baby.
did it. No. Baby's
in the
you
baby
never seen about
carriage,
the baby in the carriage.
sucking
You
his
don't know
thumb,
the baby's
wetting his pants.
Yeah, but you don't know the baby's name when you're making fun of your classmates for being together. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I don't know. It's like a taunt. Yeah, I don't. We'll have to look that one up. Google. What is this? Yeah. So you're right. So we did the Father of the Bride when I got engaged, and then we always kind of thought, if I did get pregnant and had a baby, this would be fun to do this one. Good, solid sequel, I'd say. We talk about sequels a lot on this podcast. We do a lot of them. What makes a good sequel? Returning cast members, trotting out some of the same jokes, slightly different storyline. And I feel like this accomplishes all three of those, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as luck would have it, it's a natural thing to happen to a family who someone just got married. So it's kind of like it was set up for them, really, this sequel, right?
Right.
And yeah, it worked pretty well. I think there's more like weird racist things in this one that I forgot about. And like, that's interesting. And then, okay, so here's what's happened to me now as a 34-year-old person. George is like a fucking weirdo.
He's
like,
a weirdo. Oh my God. The first
I-
scene, I was like my skin was crawling.
Yeah. Like, why are you obsessed with your fucking daughter? And like,
know.
poor Maddie doesn't even have a chance of being like a possible blip on his dad's radar. He's just like, who's Maddie?
I
Like, he
feel
doesn't
like
even remember.
We did kind of talk about this in the
He
first
wasn't
one
this bad.
because there
in
was
the
like
first
a
one.
level of it. But
It was. But this was
this first
extreme.
scene where they like show Annie coming in and it's like slow mo and she's like tossing
"There's
her hair.
my girl." And then the line after that is like, I always have to remind myself she's married.
Yes.
Ew.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Because
it's so
she's not a
crazy.
little girl anymore. It's like, sure.
Right. Right. And they
but it's
and
just
the,
like,
and the way they phrase, so it's like obviously him. Okay, so the first one is about him being like overprotective of her daddy's little girl,
again,
firstborn.
like, yeah,
so
trying to hold on
whatever.
to her, like,
Yeah.
oh, she's too
was
young to
weird,
get married.
and
Yeah.
like it felt weird. And then this one, he's like the only person in the world who does not want to be a grandfather. I mean, I've literally never met a parent who was like, "Why are you want to have a baby? Are you crazy?"
or being like mad at your daughter's husband for impregnating her. Like, what is this?
I mean,
don't get it.
I agree. Like they kind of took that like a bit too far, but it's still pretty much gold in the hands of Steve Martin, right? That guy can like do no wrong, even though it's anyone else that would have been, I think, way creepier. But he's able to kind of turn it around because he is this like kind of cheapskate curmudgeon kind of guy who has all these issues.
Spaz. Yeah, he's just like a spaz.
But
spaz. But still fun movie, and a lot of lines I like in this movie I do use frequently throughout my days. So I respect it for that. And obviously, it has the return of Franck, who's just like endless amounts of entertainment.
Right.
And
he really shines in
and
this
Diane
one.
Keaton, our favorite. So
Totally.
what's to not to like, except about the racism, which is strange.
I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense like why they put that in there. But so Father of the Bride 2 from 1995. We already said Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, Martin Short, B.D. Wong, Kimberly Williamson as Annie, Kieran Culkin as Maddie, the son, overlooked. Poor Maddie.
Who's Maddie? Like, it's like, ugh, yeah.
George Newbern is Brian McKenzie, and Eugene Levy. It is this turn as this like kind of racist portrayal of this Middle Eastern like real estate mogul or something. I don't know. So yeah, pretty much all the same characters except Eugene Levy is the new one. Same director, Charles Shire. So Nancy Myers produced this, but she works with him a lot. Actually, I think they were married at one point. Those two, and doing these sort of family rom-com-y, Diane Keaton's in a lot of kind of movies. Yeah. He was the writer and director for other movies such as The Parent Trap, Private Benjamin, and Baby Boom.
Trap.
So
Ooh, I love Private Benjamin. Cool.
Yeah. So he did Baby Boom too.
Baby Boom. Yeah.
which is
Best movie
which is
ever.
one of our favorites. So it's a perfect little sequel, and they do some interesting stuff with like the midlife crisis aspect of it. That's kind of like what the movie's centered around. So it's kind of cute that the way that they have the mom and the daughter, getting pregnant at the same time. However, gotta be honest, I would be fucking pissed if my mom got
Would you want to go through it with someone in?
No, I really don't need to go through it with my mom. Like, I'm good. And I don't think she does either. But good for them for keeping that baby, because I gotta be honest, if I was 50 years old, I'd think I'd just say, not having this baby. It's just, and we'll talk about, obviously, like, does that make sense? I mean, there's no doubt that, like, you could have a baby at that age, but, whoa. I mean, they really do look like grandparents.
Well, but that Steve Martin just has that like white hair thing. Like he's had that white hair for like
Nina
a while.
looks like somebody's mother, though, not a baby's mother.
She is somebody's mother. Well, I mean, I think it's okay. Whatever they want to do, that's fine.
I mean, it's great because now, I mean, this is like very much the thing, right? 50 years old, Janet Jackson just had a baby. People are like, oh my God, that's awesome. 50 isn't really the 90s 50, if you think about it. But that shit happens. And you're right. You just got to roll with it if you want to, but you also have a choice if you don't want to as well. Anyways. So yeah. Anything else you want to talk to before we get into the synopsis?
No.
First impressions? I mean, 1995. I feel like this was older, so 95. I wasn't.
When was the first one?
I want to say like 92 or 3. Yeah, I guess. But
I thought so,
we
too.
didn't see it in the movie theater. Definitely just like a sequel that came and we rented it eventually.
Yeah, it was like always on. It's like one of those sequels that's like on more than the original on HBO sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when we were little, it was like, oh, what's on? Oh, Feather Ride Part 2. Like, wow, haven't seen the first one in a while. Haha.
Right.
And that's why we always liked all these sequels, right? Because we always saw them more than the original one. So, yeah, I mean, on this rewatch, yeah, definitely. I mean, I like Annie better now. I think she's really turned around for me. She did not change her last name, which I was surprised about. And like, go, Annie, fucking killing it. And then what was the other thing she did? Oh, and she's career driven and puts her career first, which was like, yes, bitch, yes. So I'm all about Annie. Like first movie, I was like, Annie, what are you doing? And now I'm like, Annie, you cool, you cool.
Also, shout out to Boston. Boston gets some love.
She's
in
like,
this
I
movie.
love Boston.
I know.
How does she
I was
know
like,
Boston?
Yeah.
Like,
I have
what?
no idea.
Wasn't she like abroad for like 4 years in like Italy?
Yeah.
Weird. Anyways, but yeah, good times.
Yeah, no, yeah. Her character definitely improved in this. I mean, both her and her husband's did. Yeah, it was just that the Steve Martin, George Banks just got weirder and weirder. Let's be honest. It does not sit well. Okay. It's time for the sweetie synopsis. Yeah.
Sweeties.
Every party has a pooper. That's why they invited you.
George Banks.
Party pooper. George Banks. I mean,
you.
that scene in the hospital, or when they meet them in the
so
elevator
cute.
in the hospital, I was like losing my mind. The reactions, like,
Oh my God, I
both
know.
Frank and BD Wong
Yeah.
to things were like,
oh my God.
my God.
I love it. It was so good.
It was so good.
Just
loved
the
it.
cutest.
I was cracking up.
George Banks is still, owner and CEO of this shoe company that I'm still obviously I don't think the shoe company would be still kicking today.
Did you know it was called Sidekicks? Was that
No.
revealed in the first one? I don't think it was.
Maybe, I don't know, like on a poster. I don't know. It seems like, I just don't get it because it like seems like a small like operation, and yet it seems to be big enough that like random doctors at the hospital are wearing the shoes. So like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah. Is it
Anyways.
like a Nike?
It seems like it. Like,
I mean,
the not as
right.
cool Nike.
And he's so cheap, and he
knockoff.
like in the first one they talk about how much money the Mackenzies have, because remember they like go stay in there.
Yeah.
crazy house or whatever. But I think we talked about this in the first one. Like clearly, like they're
You're pretty
millionaires
rich,
too. Yeah, it's just they're talking like they're like middle class, and we're
Right.
like, no, I think you like own a shoe like enterprise or
Empire,
something.
yeah.
Empire.
So true. So true. But yeah, I don't know how much time has passed exactly between the first one and this one, but let's assume a couple years.
Yeah.
And so we meet up again with the Banks family, and they are expecting the arrival of Annie and Brian, who are coming over to deliver some news. And Nina and Brian's parents are all kind of like looking at each other like, ooh, I think I know what it is, and are super excited about it. And like George, fucking clueless, like weirdo over here, is like, oh, I know what it is. They're moving to Boston. It's gonna be terrible. Or like he just like has these like weird like it's like babies don't exist or something in George's world. Like that would never cross his mind.
Yeah, like
and his
that
rationale
would be a
is
next step.
Yeah, and his rationale is that Annie is too young because, like, okay, yes, she did get married, like, as right out of college, sure. So she's, what, like 23 having this baby probably? Yeah. And he's worried about her, like, missing out on in things in her life. But, I mean, like I said, Annie is career-driven, and she's still thinking about her career, and she's going to be fine. So, like, don't worry about your daughter. She's a grown-ass woman, and she can take care of herself. So... Anyway, so they come over, and then George, does this thing where he is like, oh, I know what it is. You're buying a house. You bought a house. And everybody's like, oh, that's what it is? Oh, nuts. I thought you were having a baby. And nobody's asking is that what it is? They're just like, oh, yes, George is right. George is always right. And then Annie's like, well, you got your wish. I'm pregnant. And so they're all rejoicing. And George over here is the one man in the world not excited by his daughter and her husband having a baby.
Yeah.
She's
I've never seen anything like it. It was so strange.
And then he is briefly mad at Brian. And it's just a weird scene. And so... Annie's as usual, pretty savvy about her crazy dad, and she's like, are you doing okay, Dad? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. So now George's stress and anxiety at this point is that they are not old enough to be considered grandparents yet. How can they ever be grandparents? They're still young and thriving, right? And Nina's like, oh my God, get over yourself. You're not young anymore. You just don't want to accept it. So at this point, George has a midlife crisis. So he goes to the gym and is trying to get buff, and he can't even lift the bar without any weights on it, at the gym. Yeah. And some woman has to come and help him and spot him. And then he goes to the hair salon and decides he wants to look younger. So they dye his hair brown, a dark chestnut brown, I guess. And he gets does he get a new suit as well? Is that part of his makeover?
I don't know. I mean,
he's wearing a turtleneck,
and he already has a midlife crisis car. That's just his style. He's a little MG or something like that, or a Porsche. And and he's feeling all groovy, and he stops at a stoplight. Or the salon girl is like, you look bitchin'. Yeah. And he's like, bitchin'? Yeah. Well, the way he says that. And he stops at a stop sign, and this girl's flirting with him. Yeah. Is this a thing that really happens? Maybe in California. I've literally never seen it in my life.
No.
Or two people in a convertible, and one's a hot woman, and she's like, hey. Gives you all these looks and stuff. And he's like, oh, sorry, married.
I mean, hats off to him. He's not Clark Griswold, who's a creeper, and is trying to seize that opportunity.
Oh, totally. And he's just for the record, he's supposed to be 56. Okay, so he's whoa, mid 50s. Yeah.
Wow.
So then he gets home. He has bought Nina some lingerie from Victoria's Secret. And opened up a charge account for her there. I don't know if you heard that little bit.
Gee, thanks. Yeah.
So weird.
And me with more debt.
Maddie isn't home, so he basically seduces her, and they have
on the kitchen floor.
On the kitchen floor. It's raining, and there's romantic music playing, and they have sex on the kitchen floor. And then come to and also kind of come to agree that like the house is too big for them and there's all these problems with it, and maybe they should get us downsized basically, even though they still have like a 12-year-old. Maddie's like 12.
Right. And it's like they only had one child. Like they have 2 children total. So one is gone. It's like not a big, it's not a crisis.
Again, I feel like they're acting like empty nesters, and poor Maddie's like, what about me?
Again, like poor Maddie. So yeah.
He's like still like legitimately still a child. But
seriously. But so George is like,
so it all adds up to this midlife crisis thing.
Yeah. And George decides, oh, I know, let's move to the beach. And like get a condo or whatever, move to the beach. So Nina's like not really sold on this, but they decide to just like list the house and see if they get any nibbles. And then 6 weeks goes by and no nibbles. And then a nibble comes in the form of Eugene Levy in brown face as Mr. Habib, who is a Turkish businessman of some kind. And he wants to buy the house for like a ridiculous amount of money and wants it in 2 weeks. They have to move out in 2 weeks. So they're not even a little bit prepared for this. And the catch is that George has to make this deal like right now. Like he can't go consult Nina, his wife. He decides this is too good of an opportunity. I need to do this. And
because he offers him $15,000 to move out in 10 days. So
Extra.
It's like the cash bonus part.
Right. Which I don't know how much this house went for, but is 15,000 like that important? Like I don't know.
It's a beautiful house, but they've lived there for like 20 years, so it's like should be a pretty big decision.
Right. Instead he's just like, yep, okay. So then he calls the whole family over to like tell the news, and of course, typical George fashion, is too cowardly to tell Nina that this has happened. So he just lets like dinner go on. And then there's this awkward, this is the reason you typically don't tell people what names you're thinking of for your baby, because they tell them and the parents are like, what? Ew, that's a terrible name. And then the worst part is that they can't decide which last name to give the baby. So they're like, oh, we're going to do a combination, but it has to have like the same letters from both of our names. Our favorite is Zankman. Which doesn't even make sense because there's only a K is the only thing from Banks. Maybe the N. No, that's in Mackenzie too.
First of all, it reminded me of Ghostbusters. Peter Venkman, number one. Number two, I wrote this line down when he was like, "Are you telling me I could have a granddaughter, Chloe
Sophie Zankman?
I thought it was Chloe Zankman.
Sophie,
because Chloe was one of the names.
Yeah, but
Sophie was too. But okay, whatever.
It's not even American.
Yeah. Yes, we know funny. That, Maddie.
So basically, they get in a fight. Yeah, they get in a fight trying to be like the baby's name should be Banks or Mackenzie. Yeah, which is an interesting fight. And then Annie like looks at George and is like, do something, say something. And George is like, hey, I sold the house today. And then that turns into, the new crisis. And Nina's pretty upset about it. But ultimately, she just kind of like accepts it as it is. And they move out temporarily into Brian's parents' house because they're going on a cruise. And so they can stay there in their palace while they're gone. So at some point, Nina starts feeling like kind of under the weather, and she's like, I don't really know what's going on with me, and she thinks maybe it's menopause. So they make a doctor's appointment, and the doctor tells George to come along, that George should accompany her to this appointment, which is like probably the scariest thing you can hear from your doctor when you're not like expecting, bad news. And so they go to the doctor, and he's
why would the doctor be like, it's nothing bad or something?
Like, say it right away. Like, why are we hanging on by like a thread of like poor Nina's like a...
Well, I always hate that about doctors anyway. When nothing is wrong and they call you and they're just like, can you please call me back? And then you're like pissing just your pants, like waiting for like the phone to call them back to be like, oh my God, it's cancer. Yeah. And they're like, just wanted to tell you we got your results and they're all fine. Like, what? Why don't you just leave that in the message?
Bye. Yeah. God. So the doctor says, guess what? You're pregnant. And George, again, instead of being like, oh my God, this is great news, goes, and who, may I ask, is the father? And is like being super rude
Nina
and like
Dickerson.
calling Nina by her maiden name and like a harlot and like so awful. Like seriously, you forgot you had a romp on the kitchen floor like a couple weeks ago,
and like
Come
so
on,
insensitive, man. And like obviously, Nina's very happy, but I'm sure like she's the one who's going to be having to have this sort of, what would be termed a pretty high-risk pregnancy if you're like 50 years old. Like, freaking think about like what your wife is going through right now. I mean, the guy is like so self-centered and in some ways. I mean, I guess that's the frustrating thing about that character is that some of the stuff he does is like, oh my God, you think about anyone but yourself, but then
or Annie.
kind of gets
like
over
himself or Annie. It's like always those two things, right?
Yeah.
There's never like anyone else. Maddie and Nina are just kind of like side things. Like, we kind of care about you. Right. But yeah, so they're like in this weird, like celebratory, can't believe it state. George, immediately panics and passes out because there's no way he can be a father. He's too old, even though he was just like, I'm too young to be a grandfather. So like, you can't have it both ways, buddy. And so he passes out, and then like they go to the elevators and they bump into to Franck and what's his assistant's name? B.D. Wong's? I forget what his name is, but they're in the hospital as their second home because Franck likes to get plastic surgery and like tuck in, this and that. Even though it's the gynecology, it's the gynecology.
Wow. I thought they like
division
went to when they were feeling okay. I was not listening, or once again cannot understand his accent because I thought they were like,
have to put the subtitles on because you learn so much.
He was going there. I thought like there were babies there, and whenever he got sad, he'd like either go and look at the babies.
Going in for a little nip or tuck.
Or I thought they were picking up clients for like baby showers there. Okay,
they don't do baby. I mean, they're just doing baby showers because that's like it was like a thing for them.
I was way off.
Yeah. So they're all excited, and then they tell them that Annie's pregnant as well, and they like flip out. But the way they found out that she's pregnant is like the nurse is like, you forgot your prenatal vitamins in this. Like, I'm pretty sure they're not supposed to do that, but whatever. And so they're super excited, and basically that's how they get added back into the Banks's life at some point. So they go to tell Annie and Brian that Nina is pregnant, and George is acting like a baby the whole time and is like, we're too old to be parents. We're gonna have to go to his graduation in wheelchairs and like all this stuff, which like could be true, but like don't say that. And Nina's so upset and is just like, she has such a great speech to George, and then she storms out and is like, don't you follow me, Banks, and then leaves. And so now, he did bad. He did a bad thing finally and gets called out for it. So he's kind of like, okay, what do I do? How do I get this back, on track here? Takes a stroll by the old family house, which is now under Mr. Habib's ownership. And he sees him about to demolish their beautiful family home, colonial, and
with a wrecking ball.
With a wrecking ball. Like a wrecking ball. Mr. Habib told me to stop it, and it stopped miraculously right in front of. It was like, that part always stresses me out.
I know. Never would have happened. You can't stop a wrecking ball like.
Yeah.
It's in air, so just like 5 physics would like have it. Yeah, it doesn't just stop straight when you do it.
Thought so. I thought that was fishy.
Like totally impossible.
Yeah. But, George makes this whole speech. He's like, you can't knock the house down. Like, I didn't know you were going to knock the house down, blah, blah, blah. So he gives him, like, this speech of, like, I'm going to be a dad again. I want to raise my kid here, blah, blah, blah. I painted these shutters. I laid these bricks. Like, dude, George, you're like, why is he such a cheapskate? Like, you can pay people to do all this shit, George. Like, calm down. So eventually Mr. Habib agrees to sell back the house at, like, a ridiculous price, probably much more money than George sold it for. So,
and it's the worst thing because it sounds like they had paid off the mortgage on that house. So when they sold it to Mr. Habib, they would have gotten all that cash. They didn't have to pay any mortgage back. But then he has to pay Mr. Habib, $100,000 more or something. So then he's like in the hole for $100,000 to buy back his own house.
So sucks. But they got the house back. He brings the key as an apology to Nina, and she immediately forgives him and is like, yay. So they move back into the house. And then as he's still on the apology tour, he hires Franck to throw the baby shower. And at this baby shower for both of them, they decide to now also design a baby suite, which is like building an addition onto the house. So
Which
for
they
the baby,
totally don't need.
Which they don't need.
Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
It doesn't make any sense.
First of all, how many
like,
bedrooms do you think that giant house already has
I know.
that they couldn't fit a baby in
5?
one of
Yeah.
them? I know.
And like
Nutty.
he just paid $100,000 to buy on top of whatever $1 million for the house. Like, okay. So very interesting. So then he has his wife and his daughter, pregnant. Brian is on a business trip in Japan, or is that only at the end?
Doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense at all. You're telling me your wife is due in 1 week, and you're like, yes, good time to make an emergency
to Japan. See ya.
Halfway across the world when your wife is due in a week? Like, you're out of your mind.
I mean, they are in California, so it's like a little closer, I guess, but like
true.
not. But it still must be very far. Not like a 3-hour plane ride home. So Annie's living back at the home, and George is taking care of them. And so it's July, same due date as our own sweetie. So it's super hot. So they install like 2 new air conditioners. The house is an igloo, and George has to like run around wearing like a winter coat and scarves, and like is doing all this shit and like getting takeout and like making sure they have pillows under their feet and like all this stuff. Meanwhile, he's like, oh yeah, I haven't slept in 3 days because then I had to go to work. And it's like, George, you own the fucking company. Take a vacation. Like, I don't understand why he's going to work. And he's like, I tried to sleep at work. Why don't you just stay home and sleep? Okay.
Right. He's not like actually making the shoes. I mean, maybe that's how he
so
saves
weird.
money.
Why is he a psycho?
I know. He's like the CEO. Like, well, it's just one of those like, hardworking people who own a business who like can't let it go.
Not hardworking enough to not sleep at work, to go to work to sleep. That's what that really got me. I was like, you went to work to sleep? So strange. And my other favorite part about all the like summer shenanigans is when they're like in the bed and Nina's like, I'm hot. Meanwhile, she has a turtleneck, long sleeved nightgown on.
Exactly what I said.
Hello?
I'm hot in this prairie nightgown that I'm wearing in the middle of summer in California.
Why are you
yes,
wearing a
Nina.
turtleneck night? I've never seen that. Like, what? So such strange things. So after the reveal of the finished baby suite, which is like, wow, it's the size of my apartment.
Yours. I was watching it. I was watching it with Jimmy, and like the little like nook where the changing table was. I'm like, oh, that's the size of our baby's nursery. The nook.
Like, what is this place?
It is like a master bedroom. It is bigger than their bedroom by far. I think.
Bigger than half their house. It's like the craziest
it was just totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't know why they
frivolous
did it at all, and it seemed again like
nonsense.
so out of George Bank character.
Right.
He's so cheap and just spent all that money. Yeah, he just I don't know.
They had to find a way to like keep Frank involved.
Right.
So as a result, Frank is always at the house, which George feels good about, and they do this like sweet little kind of like bonding thing. As like the first movie, George didn't really like Frank because he was spending all this money and blah blah blah. And now they're kind of getting to be friends. And Frank does like baby aerobics with the girls, and it's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Little tin soldier, happy tin soldier, attitude. It's so fun. Oh my god, I love it. Week before Annie's due date, she's had a couple of false alarms at this point. One was just a false alarm. The second one was indigestion. So they're like kind of on their toes about that. George, like I said, hasn't slept in 3 days. He tells Frank this, and Frank is like, here, let me give you these sleeping pills. I take half of one, and it does enough for me. But then Frank says later they're mild. So George, gets confused in his delirious state and is like, cool, I'll try these out. Takes 2 of the pills at the same time immediately, and then asks Maddie to please pass the rules. And then as Maddie's passing the rules, George just passes out. And they're like, oh my God, what happened? And then Frank's like freaking out because he's like, he took both pills. And George is just a zombie. And so Frank's like, let's just put him on the couch. He needed to sleep anyways. So then they like strap George on Frank, and Frank's like trying to walk with George on his back. And I love that he's like, I'm going down. And he's like, second wind. And he like keeps going. And then you're like, great. And then unfortunately, here comes Annie with her bag. And she's like, Mom, Nina, it's time. And so this part, I'm sure you'll have feelings about this, but Nina's like, Frank, you have to drive because I'm too big to get behind the wheel? No. Okay, this is why I asked you this like recently. Remember, I was like, you can still drive? And you were like, duh, of course I can. And I was like, oh, I guess the Father of the Bride Part 2 has just been putting lies in my head all this time.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's no reason. I mean, I'm on like the larger side, I'd say, and I think I'm around in the same like week-wise Nina is. 37 weeks, 36 weeks. I mean, if you had like twins or triplets or whatever and you're like sticking way out, like maybe. But I think if you're just having one baby in there, and she didn't look big at all.
And it was an emergency. Like, get in the fucking car.
You definitely could. I mean, I took a drive today. I don't even touch the steering wheel yet. I mean, that would be like, kind of uncomfortable. I guess if you got in an accident, maybe that would be bad. But you're not like not driving. I don't know.
It was like silly. Nighttime. I don't know.
Nina.
I don't know. So Frank somehow gets George in the car and they drive to the hospital. And they get Annie set up in a room. George wakes up miraculously because he gets accidentally wheeled into the prostate examination room. And, a doc tries to stick his finger in his butt.
Who would give a prostate exam to someone who is passed out in a wheelchair?
Well, I guess like
hospital.
Maybe they sedate people for that sometimes if they're like freaked out. So maybe they were like expecting him to be there, and it was just like a bad timing thing. But that wakes George right up, and it says my favorite line of all time, which is "Do I know you?" I just love that. Which I always say in my head when someone is like talking to me, and I'm like, "Do I know you?" Like, "Do I know you?" And so he's up now, so everything's okay, it's fine. So he's goes to Annie's room, and Nina's helping her, and so they meet the doctor. So they've had this same doctor for Annie's when Nina had Annie. Unfortunately, he's on vacation, and because they were expecting Annie to have a due date soon. So why was he on vacation? I don't know. So there's this other doc, Dr. Megan, who's here, and again, George is like, she's too young. She's just a girl. Like, it's just like, so,
no doctors are named Megan?
Megan, which is funny because my friend is a doctor whose name is Megan. I was going to send that to her and be like, look at a lot of this asshole.
It's such a weird call. I'm like, I mean, he's like, just like making shit up.
It's not what like that's not how it works. Like, it's not like your name like what a weirdo. So anyway, finally she shuts him up by being like, yeah, I've delivered like over 300 babies. Hey, you're wearing sidekicks. I love sidekicks. And he's like, oh, okay, she's okay. And then he very quickly is like, let's name our daughter Megan. So they're helping Annie through the contractions, and then Nina starts experiencing like a sharp pain in her side. So she gets checked out. Turns out she's in labor too, LOL. So now Frank and George are going back and forth between the two rooms and like tag teaming this situation. Annie's pregnancy is going fine, or delivery is going fine. She's pretty much on track. She's just kind of like slowly happening as it does. And Nina, the baby's heart rate the baby's like kind of not doing so well with the contractions or whatever, and so the baby's heart rate is increasing, and so they're gonna watch it, and if it doesn't go down, decreasing, and if it doesn't go back up, they're gonna do a C-section. So unfortunately, that's what happens. So at the same time, Annie's getting ready to deliver as well. So George is like, Doc, these women are my life. Like, don't let anything happen to them. She's like, I won't. But so she hands off Annie to the chief resident, because hers is just like, simple delivery, vaginal birth. I could do that in my sleep. And so, and then Nina goes into the surgery room, I guess, for the C-section. And for some reason, George can't go with her? This I didn't get. Isn't it just a C-section?
Yeah, that's not. I mean, they get you all prepped up and numbed up and ready to go, and then they let the husband come in there or
What's
partner
up with
come in
that?
there, and you're like behind this curtain. You know, like belly's blocked off, so you're behind the curtain, and then you're not a lady like in there by yourself, like
No.
clutching the nurse's hand.
what?
So that's pretty not standard protocol. Also not standard protocol. Bringing out your baby into the hallway, like carrying it and be like, here's your baby.
Here's your baby. And like, where are all the other people in this hospital? And like, is it sterile? Like, I'm just like, I'm so confused. So Brian, Annie has the baby first, so her baby's a boy. So neither one of them found out what the sex of the baby was, which is interesting. So Annie's is a boy, and they name him George after George. Really sweet. So he's holding, baby George. And then Megan the doctor walks out with his new daughter, who they're going to name Megan. And so then he's holding both babies. And Brian came just in the nick of time. I forgot to say that. And so he's holding both. And he's like, I've never felt more joy in my life. We don't get any updates on Nina. Like, how is she? I don't know. Who's to say?
I think the doctor does say she did great or something like that.
I know, but like, we don't get to see, like, it's just like she doesn't exist or something. Like, it was a strange thing. So then cut to, 3 months later, Annie's getting ready now to move to Boston. She got offered this new job, which her and Brian had gotten in a fight about briefly.
They're always fighting.
Always fighting.
They fought in the first one too.
I
Same
know,
thing.
I
About a
know,
blender.
I know. It was like a misunderstanding.
Actually, was very same.
Was different.
No, it was the same because that one was about a blender, and she thought she was going to be like a little housewife, remember?
Right.
And she got like freaked out. And then this one was him not being supportive,
Well,
and also
I
like
gotta
feeling like
say-
a little housewife.
She's kind of right, because he was like, making all these excuses for why they couldn't leave. But then she said, like, if it had been the other way around and he got an offered job, she would go in a second and not even a question. So what's the difference?
What's the difference?
Even if they had a baby, right? So she has a point, and maybe that's true. Maybe Brian is holding some like weird, deep-seated feelings about how he wants his wife to be like a little housewife.
Did
so-
they make it, sweetie?
Well, I don't know. I feel like Brian's job is an independent.
He's an architect too.
No, he's an independent consultant for like internet or something. Remember, like some like tech thing.
Oh, okay.
Because he can work wherever, because he's just
Right.
like works for himself. But I don't know. I don't know if they made it. I don't know. I guess it depends if he's okay with her being successful or not, which I assume he is, but I don't know. I don't know if they make it. But yeah, that's the end, and then they wish them goodbye, and it's sad, but then don't worry, they have this cute baby to keep them happy and occupied, and then that's it. And then they push the baby in one of those old-fashioned strollers, which is like very scary to me. It seems like you hit one bump in that thing, the baby like flies out. Like it's a scary thing. I don't like it. But yeah, that's it. That's
It's
the
really
flick.
cute, and they like kind of end it. He's like making funny faces at the baby, and the baby's laughing, and he has this like tiny little basketball, and he's like, we're gonna like play sometime. And if you remember, like that was the thing with Annie, they love to play like one-on-one together at the little family hoop. So it's like he's gonna get to do that like all over again. And so it's again like this like kind of terrible circle of him being like sketchy, like obsesso dad. It's like he gets to do it all over
only
again,
to
which
the
is like,
girls.
no.
Like, why just the girls?
don't
Like, why isn't
know.
he like protective over Maddie or like?
He just loves his girls. I told Jimmy, I was like, that's going to be you. Hey, the basketball thing?
hope
Come on.
not. But yeah, sweet little flick.
Yeah.
Did you cry? That's my question.
No,
to you.
I haven't cried, and I haven't really gotten
What?
any of the, kind of like sad about my third trimester. I'm not sad about it, but I mean, it's probably good things. But I really haven't gotten like any of those classic symptoms. Like I'm
like-
definitely like hormonal, but I'm not like weepy or like super
Right, but
emotional or anything.
I mean, you were always weeping before you got pregnant at everything, so that's interesting.
yeah. Now I feel like not like dead inside, but like
Oh my God.
maybe I'm like just too distracted by like what's about to happen or something. I also, what was the other one that I was like, oh, I haven't really gotten that yet. Oh, I haven't really been tired. Like I've been a little bit tired, but
You can
like
never
I
sleep.
still, I never sleep. First of all, that's one thing that they don't mention. These women are like sleeping all the time.
But
in
you're
this
not
movie.
tired?
I'm like, what? But I'm not tired, and I'm like, I'll take a little nap sometimes, but not more than like 20 minutes, and I'm still going to bed at like midnight every night and waking up at 6. So I'm only running on like 4 hours of
Jeez.
sleep. Yeah, so like
I'm 9. I'm like, this is still late.
it's weird. So I'm like missing out on some of these. Maybe it'll like start to hit me a little bit. I started feeling a little bit more tired last week, but this week I have like pretty good energy. And I mean, it is, you do get it in like bursts though, which is again like sort of prepping you for labor because you know, you're going to need these like bursts of energy in labor. You have some downtime, but then you got to be like ready to go.
Yeah.
So I think it's just your body like training you.
Gotta eat those ice chips, you know? Gotta stay hydrated.
Yeah. So that's another thing. So yeah, so let's start with like the kind of pregnancy like bullshit in this movie.
Misconceptions.
Now, mind you, this is the 90s, so all this stuff has changed pretty rapidly. You know, even if you were pregnant 10 years ago, you would see stuff that is treated like completely different. So one of my favorite things in the beginning, and this is just totally like Hollywood, when he's being like, oh, the girls are like doing well, they're in their 3rd trimester, like Annie's topping off at 125 pounds and Nina at 135.
What?
I was like, okay, so
they
okay,
weighed
first of all,
110 pounds before
I was
they
not
got
even
pregnant?
right.
Eat
So
shit.
I was not even any of those weights before I got pregnant. But let me tell you, I almost weigh 200 pounds right now, and there are some women that are just like that. I have no idea. I'm so confused what's going on in their body versus going on in mine. I've done nothing different. Like I still exercise. I'm not like eating more or anything like that. But I've still managed to gain like almost 40 pounds. And then there's these other women who are like, I've gained 5. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, there's just so much stuff that it's not just the baby. It's like the placenta, like your uterus gets heavier because it just grows. Like there's tons of fluid in you. Your boobs are like 5 pounds each. So I don't know. I just cackled when I heard that. Like a whopping 135 pounds.
Why do they even
Nina.
have to say that at all?
But they said it like that was like, wow, look at how like
Look
big
how
they are.
what big they are. Yeah.
Oh my god, it was like nutty to me. The hot flashes thing. So like I haven't really gotten that. That can be a thing. We had the heat wave this week here in Massachusetts, as like a lot of the country did, and it totally sucked. But I think everybody was hot. It wasn't just me.
It was pretty miserable.
So I'm lucky I haven't really had that. The false labor thing. So we already talked about how Annie is just like, oh God, you think I'd know like indigestion and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you do your reading or you talk to your doctor, you'll be pretty sure like what are these fake contractions and what are real ones. So Annie, I don't think she read her what to expect when you're expecting.
She's too busy.
Yeah, I'm too busy working. As Sweetie already brought up, I'm too big to get behind the wheel. Again, I don't think it's not really a thing. I love that Annie was in like 5 minutes of what is like technically early labor when you're like counting your contractions and whatever. And like the whole laboring scene was very calm. Like they were just in the bed and they were like, okay.
But she was in like that scene always like this is what I judged my like perception of like how awful pregnant like delivery was like gonna be, because it's like, okay, so I like stare at this machine and then like somebody tells me when it's over and then it's like I'm gonna die and then it's over. I'm like, okay. So that was I'm like, I still don't really get it. I'm like, what was that machine? What is that machine hooked up to?
So it's hooked up to you and it can measure actually like how like your contraction. So it can tell you when you're hooked up to a monitor. But for my birth plan is to not have a monitor on at all because I'm not going to be in a bed because that's actually like the worst thing for you when you're laboring, because you want to be able to move around and you want to be able to move the baby down like into your pelvis and getting ready to you get to a point where you can push. Just sitting on a bed, like gravity, you're just working against gravity and it's really not good for you at all. So they might have had epidurals. Maybe that's why they were in the bed. If you have an epidural, you have to be in a bed because obviously you can't feel like your legs. But yeah, I'm not getting one. So I'm going to be walking around. I'm going to be like in the shower. I mean, there's all these different techniques that you use now, sitting on like a yoga ball and like bouncing around. doing squats. I mean, there's like so many other methods now. It's not just like, okay, like you sit in this bed for 24 hours and you just have these contractions and then, okay, we're going to push. Like, it's really not like that. And like I said, we were so calm and she's like, oh, it hurts. Ah, like it's going to be like way worse than that. She wasn't sweating like at all. She looked like totally glorious. And Nina did too. And that's the other thing. So the ice chips was like a big thing. Now they've really lessened that. Like you can, unless you have an epidural, you can eat in labor. So I mean, you can imagine people, how the hell do you get the strength to push out a baby when you've been eating ice chips for like an entire day? I mean, that's just nutty to me. So they've really loosened that up. And you can have at least, you know, I think part of it is you really don't feel like eating, but like you can at least have like liquids. They have popsicles. Like I'm bringing honey with me. I'm bringing like applesauce in like little packets. They recommend bone broth. I mean, there's a good chance you're going to vomit, so you don't want to have like an Italian sub or anything. But, you know, that most hospitals, again, unless you're getting some kind of drugs, like encourage, or a C-section, like encourage eating. So I just can't wait.
Jeez.
Popsicles. Oh boy. My favorite. And I think that was most of it. Yeah. Did I miss any?
I mean, they make the whole thing go by like super fast.
Yeah.
Like they're like in the second trimester for like a blip.
Right.
And then it's like, and now it's July. And like the cold, like the AC was extreme.
The food
eating,
cravings. Yeah.
they're like in bed with like plates of food like
Yeah.
stacked around them. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like third trimester, you really like I'm really have been eating the least amount I think I have the entire time, mostly because your stomach is like pushed all the way up. Like my stomach is like right underneath my boobs right now. And you just don't have a lot of room like to eat a lot. So I mean, I can still like clean my plate, but I'm just like not that hungry or like jazzed about eating at all. Which is a bummer because again, you're like, oh, pregnancy and cravings and being like, give me like all this fast food. Not that that would be good for you, but it's just not a reality, you know? But what are you going to do? Okay. But one of our questions was, Jimmy brought this up when we were watching, where were like all the nurses in the hospital?
I know. You don't see anybody.
Did Frank and George have to like do all like the nursing?
All the work, yeah. There's like one nurse flitting in and out who would be like, there's something wrong. And like but yeah, you're right. No nurses, no personnel.
Yeah.
And it's not like it was like 2 a.m. It was like they were sitting down to dinner.
Right.
And they were like, the babies are going to be
evening.
born tonight, which is like, I mean, there's only a couple hours left of tonight. So like that was pretty interesting, right? Because I feel like once you go to the hospital, it's like a whole 24, 42 hours before.
I mean, for first time moms, again, this is like it doesn't always happen, but most of it does happen. It's a very long labor because your body is doing it for the first time. So you just it doesn't know what it's doing. By the time you have your second kid, those babies usually like shoot right out of you because your body remembers muscle memory. They're like, oh, I've done this before. And then never mind your third kid. So that was Nina's situation, right? So that's probably why she was like, went into labor. She had her kid early. She flew into labor. It was like super quick progression. I mean, that does tend to happen because again, like your body's like, oh, I'm an old hat at this. Like, let's go, baby. So that's probably like what happened to her. But yeah, that hospital seemed weird. I mean, I know it's just a movie, but yeah, weird hospital.
Yeah. Weird place. Weird place.
Okay, I'm just looking at my notes. Okay, so I mean, big question here. So how old do we think Nina is supposed to be?
50?
50? Yeah.
You said he's 56?
Yeah. So I'm trying
How'd
to think.
they meet
So
again?
Or when they were.
Did she like work at his store?
Well, he like explains that story about seeing her and some
the
like
first date. That was the first date.
Yeah. Oh, first date. But like, so Annie, let's say Annie's 25. If the wedding she was 23 and then it was 2 years, let's say. So Annie's 25. And then she maybe had Annie when she so she could be like mid to late 40s if she had Annie when she was like 20. But she probably had Annie when she was like 23. So I think it's more like she's like 49, 50. Yeah. So, right. I mean, it's like, older parents, not that I've not seen that. And, people are getting older and older now as parents. So it's becoming like way more common to be, 60, 70 years old at your kid's, college graduation. Which is, well, I guess I won't be that old.
Nope.
I'll be
Don't worry
50.
about it.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Well, I'll be almost 60, but still. But it's like, I don't think we're going to be definitely like the oldest parents by any means there.
And we're going to, it's like, the ages keep going down. Like 60 is the new 50 and like,
yeah.
I
mean, it does kind of suck though. I was like, at the end of the movie, I was like, well, that is kind of crazy that he's like pushing, he basically, one daughter goes away and is like moving away with her baby. And then basically like he kind of said they like were kind of at the end of the race and then they got kicked back to the back and have to do that whole process like all over again. Oh
life, man.
I know. Just like when you think about it in terms of like years and stuff, it's like, wow. That is just like another 23 or 25 years of just like doing that all over again.
Birth control. Even when you're older, still you got to use birth control, guys. Science.
Pull out. Vasectomy. What are you doing?
Yeah, seriously. Weird. Snip, snip, George. Snip, snip.
I know. It's so sad. And like some of my mom groups, I'm in a lot of these mom groups on Facebook, just like, to talk about your symptoms and whatever. And I would say like so many women are like, oh yeah, I'm getting like my tubes tied after this, which is like it's like kind of invasive procedure. It's not really a great way to like do birth control, really like mess you up. And versus the guy's vasectomy, which is like a inpatient, outpatient procedure. It's like really easy. The healing's easy.
And reversible
too. Right. And like, no, like I would say like 3 women on the group were like, my husbands are doing that. Oh, it's just like,
yeah, it's bullshit. It's bullshit.
It's just so much easier if you like take care of it that way. But whatever, this world sucks. Okay, so what do we want to talk about? I have a couple things.
I've finished my notes.
Okay. Oh wow, dang. Okay, so I don't know if you caught this, but they show $1,000 bill as the Habib guy is counting out $1,000 bills to pay George Banks. Did you happen to glance at who is on the $1,000 bill, sweetie?
No, I did not.
I had to look it up. Those big bills, you're like, is that for real? But they are. I mean, they go up like kind of high. So just as for future trivia, guys, Grover Cleveland.
Oh,
Grover Cleveland is on the $1,000 bill. I didn't recognize him. That's for sure. And
who would?
When I looked it up. I know. I was like, what's the significance?
Why
is he so significant? Yeah, he was one of the fat ones. Not the fattest one. Not Taft, who got rumored to have stuck in a bathtub.
Stuck in the bathtub? Okay, yeah.
But Grover Cleveland is interesting because he won 2 terms, but not consecutive.
Two separate terms.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Crazy. Okay, so of the baby names they chose, did you like any of those? Here's what they were. For the boy names: Cody, Cooper, Riley, and Wyatt.
I think Wyatt's unique. I think a lot of those are very like 90s boy names, so they're fine.
Cody,
I don't really have any problems with them specifically.
Okay. How about Chloe, Phoebe, Lucy, or Fanny?
Okay, Fanny, not so much. The others, super cute, obviously. I have a friend named Phoebe, and Lucy has been like one of my secret baby names for a while, so totally. Totes.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They weren't bad. And then they went with George, which I get that they were like, trying to like thank George Banks, but still George.
Right. I mean, I guess it means they went with Mackenzie.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's how they like split it. Maybe. Also, their discussion of the last name thing reminded me how I feel like in the 90s, the whole hyphenated last name thing was like a big deal. And now you definitely don't see that as much, basically for the reason that they said. That was like, it tends to be a mouthful, when you have these hyphenated names. So it's just interesting that seemed to be like some sort of like 90s phase / like bone that was thrown to feminists. And like, we just gave up on it.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I think Banks McKenzie rolls right off the tongue. I
Yeah,
think it's fine.
That's not bad. Well,
It's not
that's
the
what
worst hyphenated name I ever heard.
in the IMDb. That's what her character is listed as.
Oh, what?
Banks McKenzie.
Huh.
Yeah,
Jeez.
I know. Jeez is right. What else I have here? Okay, and then I just have a couple of real life anecdotes that parallel to stories in this, or the plot in this. So the first one is our dad had a hair dyeing moment, whether it was midlife crisis, like
Probably.
cause, not
Driven?
sure. Yeah, driven. So one day, like, okay, I mean, Dad got his hair cut the same place Mom did, cut loose, right?
Right.
He didn't go
Which was
that often.
unusual. No,
Did he?
he did. I think he did. Yeah.
He did?
He went like much more frequently than
Okay.
I did, anyways.
So our dad had like salt and pepper hair, more pepper, I'd say. More dark, had some white in it, but more like dark. And it always looked black. It always looked black to me, kind of like our hair does. When he had brown
Exactly
hair,
like our hair.
Yeah, exactly like our hair, but it it looks black, but it really is brown, right?
Mm-hmm.
So remember, he goes to the salon to get like a cut, and he still had like a good amount of hair up until like the day he died, like not maybe thinning a little, but always had like a pretty good head of hair, right? As do we. And he comes back, and his hair is like the salt is gone. It's all
It was just like
dark.
George Banks. It was exactly like George Banks.
George Banks. But it was dyed and more brown. So
Yeah.
they like couldn't quite match the dark color of his original hair. So they just did an all over brown, and it was like just too light. And it just looked off. Like, it did not look correct.
Yeah.
And I shared a bathroom with him, and I remember he had this brown shampoo to
yeah.
like
I
keep
remember
it
that
up.
Totally.
And that always freaked
That's
me
funny.
out because I was like, I mean, I've seen that now that I've like
Dad
grown
showered
up.
down there too? Why didn't he
Yeah.
shower upstairs?
Well, this was before the nice bathroom.
Right.
Yeah.
But why, like, was that
'Cause-
like the boys' bathroom? But like, why didn't you use the upstairs bathroom?
Well, because it was because my room was downstairs.
yeah, but Dad's room was upstairs. So
I
it's
know,
like,
but you had three girls using the upstairs bathroom, and then I was the only one using the downstairs. So he would rather
Yes.
use, and I think he liked the stand up like tall shower because he
Yeah.
didn't have to like shave his legs or anything, Just my theory. I'm just breaking it down, Dad. But I always thought that was so funny that like Dad did that too. He never got like a car or anything like that. I'm trying to remember like when that would have been. I think he would have been around 50. I want to say so. Maybe that's just like
I think that was the only
that's the
case.
age. Yeah. And then I just wanted to tell the story that when we told people, parents, that we were having a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So I told Sweetie knew first, and then I told my other sister and my mom like at the same time. We're on like a family Marco Polo, so like my family was done, and I told my friends, I think, a little, yeah. And then we went to Jimmy's family's house for that weekend, and we didn't like really discuss like how we were going to say it or anything like that. And this is like peak COVID time, mind you. So Jimmy's like, "Oh, we're just like talking whatever," and Jimmy's like, "Oh, well, we have some news. Emily tested positive this week."
Jimmy.
And it was like too much of a gap. It didn't like come immediately with like, and she's pregnant. It was just like too much of a gap. And, he was nervous. We were both nervous. And his parents were like, what? Like freaking out for not the right reason. And he's like, oh, no, tested positive for pregnancy. And then they got to like freak out in like the real way. But it was pretty funny.
Jeez. Leave it to Jim.
I know. It was a really good like telling the parents moment. But yeah, it's so funny. Like, how do you deliver that news? Obviously, like everyone is always so excited, but it's an awkward, it can be an awkward conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I felt for those too.
Yeah.
It's
one.
true. We're gonna have a
Right.
baby. Now look at me now.
It's gonna happen. All right. Anything else we forgot to mention?
No, but sweet movie. To make me excited or not excited of a baby? Neutral. I mean, I hope my delivery is like that. I hope it's like, ooh, is this a contraction? Like, it hurts.
Ouch,
Oh,
it's
tell me when it's over. I have a feeling it's not going to be like that. I'm just saying.
Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, maybe she'll just slide right out.
It'll be okay. Yeah. Well, we will keep you posted, dear listeners. But we've got more baby movies for you coming up. So don't worry in case you missed babies. We have tons. So yeah, so that's it. If you have anything to say, come find us on Twitter at the Sweetie Club or on Instagram at Large Marge Sent Us. Thank you as always for listening. Bye.
Bye. Rape artist?
Ooh. The dog? Oh my God, when he makes out with the dog? Yeah, that guy's a rape artist. Nasty.
Those eyes are so big. Your Doberman Shepherd. Scary.
Doberman Pinchers.
Did I say Doberman Shepherd?
No, I think you said German Shepherd, but they're not.
okay.
They're Doberman.
Doberman Pinscher. Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Bye.